the border is secured, at a later date, we'll make a determination as to the rest. But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out. I didn't even apologize to my wife, who's sitting right here, because I didn't do anything. I didn't know any of these women. I didn't see these women. These women, the woman on the plane, the woman, I think they want either fame or her campaign did it.
Sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election.
I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect, I say it's rigged.
He didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged.
I'm going to create the kind of a country that we were from the standpoint of industry. We used to be there. We've given it up. We've become very, very sloppy.
My Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund.
Secretary Clinton, Mr. Trump, I want to thank you both for participating in all three of these debates. Now the decision is up to you.
Hello and welcome to episode 37 of Skeptic Smash Talk. I'm your host, Jason Jones, and joining me once again is the real star of the show, Andi. Welcome back, Andi.
I'll leave it. Hi.
We'll get to listener feedback at the end of the show, but it turns out you have a massive fan base. So all the feedback I'm getting is, yeah, like listening to your show, but love Andi.
Oh, is that you saying that?
No, that's what all the fans are saying, so it's real. I've got it in writing.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Oh, great. That's nice to hear.
Okay, so let's get on with it. So last week, I briefly mentioned the so-called Great Repeals Act. Okay, so what is that? Well, depending on how you read it, the Great Repeals Act is either the statutory instrument that will secure the United Kingdom's future outside of the EU, or one of the greatest deceptions ever betrayed upon the nation since Naga Monchetti got voted off strictly. But rather than speculate, let's stick to what we do know. As it stands, the Great Repeals Act is proposed legislation that will end all of the authority of the EU law by converting all of its provisions, the EU law provisions that is, into British law on the very day that the UK makes its eventual emancipation from the EU, which, as I said last time, must be a full-on kick to the balls of everyone that thought they were voting to get their sovereignty back. Let me just put that into plain England talk for you. All those laws that you thought you were escaping from, were there coming with us. And of course that was always going to happen, was it? How could it not? Think about it. Close your eyes and imagine that you're starting a new nation. Fuck it. Call it Jasonland. How do you govern and protect and police Jasonland if you don't have any articles or instruments of legislation to do so? Well, think about it. What's happened in the past? When the United Kingdom invaded Australia, as there were no local laws, and being that the now conquered Australia was to become a colony of Britain, the laws that were adopted were those laws of Britain. Or, if you adhered to the comical stylings of Niccolo Machiavelli, if you were to invade a principality with its own laws, as its new prince, you would maintain the local laws, and your captured masses would love and adore you for it. And only if necessary do you change those laws to suit your own needs. So this is the thing. Yes, of course, the UK has some of its own laws, but since 1972, the UK have adopted the EU laws because, well, that's the law. But somehow, I guess, the troglodytes that voted out because of sovereignty must have figured that some guy in London would be purchasing a new set of laws from Amazon, taking advantage of the first month's free Prime membership. Or something even more ridiculous. Think, how long does it take to pass laws? Well, I'm working on a reply to a consultation to a new piece of legislation right now that is an incredibly fast bill that was originally drafted in early 2015. And they hope to have royal assent for this in 2017 at best. It takes a long time for an act to get royal assent. Anyway, my point is the UK does not have many modern acts of legislation that are not linked somehow to EU laws. In fact, the 1970 European Committees Act is the instrument that allows for the EU law to have priority over UK laws, to the point where the 1972 Act is seen as an integral part of the UK unwritten constitution. Oh yeah, did you know that we don't actually have a written or codified constitution? Instead, we rely on a conglomeration of acts of legislation and court judgments and conventions. Even the Magna Carta of 1215 forms a part of this, as does the 1972 Act, which is what the actual intended purpose of the Great Repeals Act actually is. And come on, the hint's in the fucking name. In fact, for the UK to emancipate from the EU, the Act of Parliament that put us there in the first place must be repealed. And that's the problem. You see, a good majority in the House of Commons and a huge majority in the House of Lords are still opposed to Brexit. And as much as Theresa thinks that she can negotiate without the approval of the House, she sure as fuck can't repeal an Act of Parliament without a vote in both houses, or without the approval of the Scottish, so it's just been revealed. And we know what they think, don't we? And that's not strictly true. The Scots need to pass a legislative consent motion, which means a vote of the Scottish Parliament, which, as you will recall from 1 minute ago, they certainly will not vote in favour of this. In fact, I will put a few wildling shekels on this being a 100% unanimous vote against the motion. Right, so what does all this mean? Why am I telling you this? Last week, I said that the courts have insisted that Mrs. May provide evidence of the advice that she's told the nation that she has received. Well, last week, or for anyone time travelling from the future to listen to this live, on Monday the 16th of October, Mrs. May was defended by the Attorney General when he said that she has the right to invoke the royal prerogative, as, I think I've said this before, as it's the will of the people. However, there is one slight problem. Well, it's a technical problem in that the prerogative, since the Magna Carta anyway, is exercised on the advice of the Prime Minister and not the demand of the Prime Minister. And as such, Theresa May thinks that she is the ruler of all that she surveys. And if that's the case, she must be very short-sighted. That aside, acting on the will of the people is fine if that's the road she wants to hoe. But what precedent is being set here? This is the same person that changed parliamentary reports that advised the decriminalisation of marijuana, a very popular change that would have been supported with a very high majority of the people. If it's the will of the people, why do we need MPs in the first place? Let's just vote on everything. Let's just vote on the will of the people. But what happens when the will of the people changes? We know now that a majority of people that voted to leave the EU want that second vote because they've changed their mind. It's the will of the people. The people have changed their mind. But do you know who else wants to change laws because it's the will of the people? President of Turkey, President Erdogan. He wants to bring back the death penalty because he says it's the will of the people. And I have to repeat this one last time. The will of the people in the UK has dramatically changed. Brexit has now become regret because the people that Mrs. May seems to be so fond of acting on behalf of have realised that they were manipulated, and we are hearing more and more stories from all but the die-hard far-right white that if given a second chance, they would vote not to leave. So, Mrs. May, you and your conglomeration of bobbled-headed yes men, if it's the will of the people you want to support, why not support the will of the 4 million petitioners that called for a second referendum? But it seems, as for the same reason that Mrs. May refuses to call a general election or submit the findings of experts, she knows what the result will be. She knows what the actual will of the people is, and she doesn't like it for 1 second. And so, as it's been so common for her to do when she doesn't like the facts handed to her, she will make up her own facts. She doesn't like the will of the people. She makes up the will of the people for herself. Who else do we know that likes to present such imaginations as facts? Anyway, there'll be more to follow very soon on this, especially as it's just been revealed that only 6 years ago, the government and Mrs. May's party agreed that any referendum will only be advisory and not legally binding. Again, for it to be anything else, then why would we need elected officials in the first place? So I'm sure we'll hear more on that, as I said, as we should hear very soon on the court's decision, which nicely links to this. So the decision will come down whether or not the MPs and the House of Lords get a vote on if the government is to invoke Article 50 or not in the first place. But what we do know is that the government will actually give a vote to the House of Lords and the House of Commons on the final negotiations of the Brexit, which I'm sure you will realise would have caused massive problems in and of itself if this was not allowed. Anyway, as I say, more to follow. Keep your ears peeled. So, Andy, the doctor's office.
Oh, God, no.
Now, we've had our own problems with that we'll get to, but it's hit the news. In particular, the receptionists at the doctor's office have hit the news. So let me read the story. This is from BBC News, or BBC Health, and the story reads, receptionists are quizzing patients about how and why they need to see their GP. And this could be putting some sick people off visiting their surgery, a survey suggests. Now, it goes on. And again, so we've personally had issues with this, haven't we? But the story reads, almost 2,000 adults questioned for Cancer Research UK. 4 in 10 say they dislike having to discuss their ills with office staff in order to get an appointment. Many were worried about making a fuss. That comment alone, this is not in the story, this is me now. So when they say many were worried about making a fuss, this means to me, those words alone mean to me that this is more elderly people than anybody else. And the fact that it's a cancer research survey.
The thing is, you're at your lowest ebb, and the last thing you want to do is argue to see a doctor. But I know I actually saw an article on this myself, and the doctor's surgery, some have actually stopped doing it. But the reason why receptionists were asking the questions was because the doctors had asked them to in order to triage, so they could work out whether you could actually just see the nurse or whether a pharmacy would do, for certain things.
Well, the story actually mentions a part of that, so we will get to that. But I want to have a look at the statistics as well, because they're quite damning, actually. So according to the article, receptionists are the first point of contact in primary care, and they're saying that it's their job to decide which patient should see a GP and how urgently. And they go and say, they do a vital. So this is Cancer Research UK saying this now. They're saying they do a vital job, but feedback from patients reveals some can be off-putting. And we'll look at the statistics. They 41%, nearly 42% say they have difficulty getting an appointment with a particular doctor. And we need to discuss that. 41.5%, say they have difficulty getting an appointment at a convenient time. Again, we've had problems with that ourselves. And dislike of having to speak to a GP receptionist about their symptoms. 40%, nearly 40% of people said that. Yeah. Around a third of the patients interviewed were also concerned that they might be negatively viewed as the type of person who makes a fuss.
Well, we've experienced that as well, haven't we?
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, this is quite an emotive subject. obviously over the last 18 months, we've experienced this on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
But I will say, I mean, I'm a person that always tries to look on both sides, and because I'm not dealing with myself personally, it's been dealing with for you. I've been able to do that a little bit now.
Yeah.
For one, I do feel that it's how a receptionist goes about what they ask and what questions and how they give the information. Because what I will say, what I have experienced over time, is when I've been stood in a queue at the doctor's reception counter, one, that pane of glass is straight away, you feel like you're in a, you've got that brick wall,
barrier, isn't it?
Yeah, so straight away it's not a welcoming. I mean, they don't even have them in banks anymore, so I don't understand the doctor's receptionist. Now, I have been stood there and listened to them on the phone, and you can hear them receiving all kind of help, probably because they can't give the right appointment to the person, or because they've asked the question they've been offended by. But if you imagine sat in a doctor's reception, being a receptionist, and then all day long you're having to say to somebody, I haven't got an appointment, and they're at their wits' end because they're poorly, you basically are the sounding board at that stage.
Yeah.
So that's me speaking up on the receptionist's point of view before we go any further as to say how it affects us personally.
Yeah, you need the devil's advocate.
What I will say is, they seem to have the wrong kind of personalities doing the job, those that actually don't want to help.
Yeah.
Do you know? Rather than, there's ways of saying things, isn't there?
Oh, of course there
is. If you
is.
say, oh my, I'm really sorry, however, maybe I could look at this for you and look at alternatives, a phone consultation or whatever, but there's none of that.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's, no, can't get one. End of.
Yeah. Well, I remember I have one of the big issues, and the report goes into this in more details. We'll leave the rest of that alone. But one of the big issues is that medical receptionists are not medically trained.
Oh, yeah.
They've got an important job to do. I don't take that away at all. They've got a very important job to do. They need to do that job, but they're not medically trained.
Yeah.
And personally, I had an incident. It was a little while ago now. It was when we were having a lot of problems with the surgery, where they were asking me, I needed to get repeat prescriptions done, and she questioned why I needed methylphenidate. And I said, well, if you know what methylphenidate is, you would know why I need it. And if you have a look at my record, you'll see that I've been on this for my entire life practically. Why are you asking such stupid questions?
Well, why does she need to know the answer to that question? Because
exactly.
It's not her to say that you can't have it or not. So
Yeah.
that, again, is a pointless question in my eyes. What she needed to do, if the prescription wasn't there ready for you, is actually have a doctor tell you why.
Yeah, exactly. And we had that point. I don't think we've discussed this before. Maybe we have, but there was a point when we first went to this surgery where I got a phone call one day. So I put in the repeat prescription request, and now I just got a phone call one day saying that they weren't fulfilling that, and there was no, this is the reason why, or you need to see the doctor. The woman was really just about, she was in the midst of hanging up before I butted in and said, what the hell is going on?
Well, that's when I rang up on your behalf after that point, because at that point you were ready to explode, so it was probably best that I picked up the situation, and I actually was. It's rare that I do have a way of speaking to people, I'd like to think, where I do get a bit more out of them probably than you do, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, but I have I kind the way I
that was one of the results of the study is that many people, more people than not, were turning to friends or relatives to have that conversation on their behalf because of the emotive issues.
Oh yeah, definitely. And when I rang up, she was extremely rude to me.
Yeah,
and she also quite discriminative. She based assumptions on
that's
on
right.
the prescription.
She seemed to think that I was a junkie and all sorts of things.
Yeah, she did, and I was actually really quite appalled, and that's why. I actually don't like making complaints. I'm one of them really pathetic British people that will queue and keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting better. I am getting better. However, I was just so angry, and I, demanded to see the practice manager because I was literally
and that's still
bouncing.
Not happened, has it?
Well, in the end, it was done by letter. She was on holiday, and there was a lot of hush and stuff. And in the end, they admitted that it was dealt with badly. But lucky enough, due to us having to kick up a fuss, we found a really quite fantastic doctor. However, we have to book a month in advance to see him.
Yeah, that's a victim of the success or the professionalism of that GP. But so before where we are now, just quickly, last month we needed to make appointments, and their booking system had, well, were they changing their booking system or did it crash or something like that?
No, they were changing it. What it was, they were changing over doctors, so they didn't actually know what doctors would be in what surgery, so you couldn't actually book for a month. Therefore, you had to ring up every morning on the day. Now, you can't get through. And I actually had to go a couple of weeks. I've not been to the doctors now for over a year. Yeah. And I literally got on my car at 8:30 and I was outside the doctors and I was in a queue. I did manage to get an appointment with my favourite doctor that day, but I literally had to be there first thing in that morning. Yeah. And lucky enough, I was off work, so I could do that. And
for those outside of the UK, our GPs, so we're talking about the public health system here, not private services, but the NHS doctor services, they work practically 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, don't they? It's very rare that you'll get a surgery that opens late.
To be fair, they're open till 6 on 3 days.
Oh, they?
Yeah, and I know there's our other doctor surgery. They opened, I think, at 7 in the morning, so you can have early morning surgery.
That was the old, was the old one.
There are later appointments that do exist.
Yeah, that probably makes up for when they have their Thursday afternoons off.
Well, they do actually. They close for an afternoon for training, don't they? However, it's because we're limited to the one doctor that we now have to go and see because of other doctors who are quite discriminative, I feel, towards.
Have we talked about that in the past?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Probably covering all ground.
What we're talking about here, just very, very briefly, is that still most doctors, most GPs, I should say, in the UK do not agree that ADHD or ADD persists past your 18th birthday.
Yeah.
They just refuse to accept it. And one of the senior doctors at this practice is one of those, and actually, refused to write a prescription that NICE have recommended or have said it is the first line medication for adults with ADHD. Yeah. And this quack has decided not that he doesn't believe that guideline.
To be honest, I do know that particular doctor actually failed to believe it existed in children because I know of a child that has been prescribed, has been diagnosed elsewhere with ADD amongst other issues, and that doctor actually was a brick wall.
Maybe initially. He's the next Thunder Cunt of the month then.
But anyway, I can see actually from that survey, because we've been directly affected by probably each one of those issues, and I actually would say that a lot of the nation now you probably get a lot of people that don't listen in the UK kicking off saying, oh well, you get yours for free, or you don't have to pay, and this is what you.
But we do pay.
Well, we do.
Pay by national insurance.
But I also believe there's a lot of wastage there.
Of course there is.
There's a lot of issues that could probably be solved by sitting with patients and working together to make it better.
But all that being said, we still have a much better and more accessible system than a lot of people in the world, especially the US.
Yeah. So, and I do actually want to finish up because it sounds like we've had just negative bashing of the doctors. There are so many nurses and doctors out there that are just so fantastic at their job, and they work ridiculous hours, and that's not taken away. It's just the frustration from the person who wants to get the right treatment for their problem. So I don't take away from the doctors and nurses. We'd be absolutely lost without them.
If it wasn't for the doctor that we're seeing now and have been seeing for over a year, 18 months now, we would be in my medical health would be appalling. Yeah, absolutely appalling. Again, so he's done wonders for us.
Yeah, and the doctor before we had these issues in our last practice, he was really good and stuff. So there's plenty of great doctors and nurses out there and stuff. It's just obviously the frustrations so I don't want to take away from that.
Shit, now we're balancing. They're going to accuse us of being the BBC soon.
No, but I generally do. I would be lost without. I couldn't do that job. No. Hands up. So I'm glad that somebody can.
Let's move on. Okay, so over the next few shows, we're adding in a few different segments that I've been working on or thinking about for a little while and tidying up some of the older ones. And one of the ones that I've been looking forward to doing so the most is called Smash Talk Misconceptions. And this is where I take a myth or a misconception and analyze it and correct it the best I can. So without any further gilding of the do's, I give you dyslexia. Okay, awful jokes aside, what is dyslexia? Well, let's start with what it is not. It is often thought of or suggested that dyslexia is an order that's characterized by the reversal of mirroring of words or letters. Also, it's perceived as being a sign of lowered intelligence. Well, that's not true. Far from it, actually. In fact, to be diagnosed, the patient needs to have at least an average IQ, or quite simply put, an IQ of 100 or more. Dyslexics also have difficulty in spelling words, reading quickly, writing words, and sometimes sounding out words in their head, as well as pronouncing words when reading aloud, or actually understanding what they're reading in the first place. And going back to the misconception of the lowered IQ, people with dyslexia actually have a normal or higher desire to learn. Dyslexia is believed to be caused by both genetic and environmental factors, and some cases actually run in families. It often occurs in people with ADHD and is associated with similar difficulties with numbers. Now, as you may imagine, or because you've heard about it a lot, you wouldn't be surprised to know that dyslexia is the most common learning disability, and it occurs in all areas around the world. It affects 3 to 7% of the population. However, up to 20% of the world population may have some degree of symptoms. While dyslexia is more often diagnosed in men, it has been suggested that it affects men and women equally. Some believe that dyslexia should be, at best, considered as a different way of learning with both benefits and downsides. Now, so just as an aside, and thinking about the point of dyslexia being diagnosed in men more than women, when we look at the whole world literacy rate, excluding North Korea, who claim a 100% literacy rate, globally, the rate is 86%, with the male-female difference of 7%. And to be honest, I thought the world overall rate would have been much lower and bigger gender differential. And that would actually be the case if we excluded Europe. When combined, not only does Europe have the highest rates of literacy, averaging in the very high 90s, most at 99%, the gender differential is essentially insignificant. However, in the areas with lower literacy rates, mostly around Central Africa and the Middle East, they have the largest differentials, with countries such as Afghanistan and Mozambique and Liberia having about a 30% differential between the genders. The reason this is important is that these are the same areas that also have the lower rates of general formal education, so the total world dyslexic population may be much higher. So, there you have it. The main points to remember here is that dyslexia is very common and is not about the mirroring of words or letters. Rather, it's about difficulties in processing the information. More importantly, dyslexics have at least, and I have to say this again, at least average intelligence. Now, if you have a myth or a misconception, please send them in. The contact details can be found at skepticsmashtalk.com.
But I notice anytime anything wrong happens, I say they're wrong because they were wrong. And were they wrong?
Are they wrong?
I think they're wrong 100%. Sometimes they're wrong. They were wrong. Sometimes they're wrong. It's the New York Times. They're always wrong.
Okay, so you heard Donald Dum Dum at the top of the show, and unless you are listening to this as an archive, there's a little over, or just on 2 weeks to go now, until my dear friends in the land of the free vote on their future. I've said this a few times now. The decisions that are made on the 8th will not just affect the next 4 years. And I've heard normal citizens and Trump supporters alike say that whatever happens, it's only for 4 years. But this is not true. Think about it. Think about your down ticket votes as well as the consequences of having certain people as the president. And I'm not suggesting that you vote in any particular way. All I'm saying is think about it, because as you may know, there's at least one vacancy in the Supreme Court, and given its current demographics, it's possible, very possible, that there'll be several new appointments over the next 4 years. And honestly, I don't say that to be nasty at all. It's a fact that several of the justices are well and truly past retirement age and are probably looking forward to a well-earned rest. That aside, with the love child of Hitler and Pope Pius Part 7 toppling over earlier this year, there's a 4-4 Democrat-Republican balance. And by that I mean that's the party of the president that appointed them. And of course, the justices vote considering their own opinions. But historically, the membership, as it stands right now, have voting records that's practically 50-50 in either direction, left to right. And given that the fat orange Joffrey has already announced that he will appoint right-wing justices, in particular justices that are against Roe v. Wade and justices that are pro-Second Amendment, you can be assured that the decision to put the Oompa Loompa with giganticism in the Oval Office for 4 years will have implications on democracy lasting decades. Worse than that, do you honestly think a midterm election will be held in a fair and equitable way? After President Joffrey has filled Gitmo with his dissenters, and don't think that that may not happen. Remember President Erdogan? He was democratically elected also, and he's filled his prisons to the brim. Anyway, enough doom and gloom. I'm fairly certain that his efforts at the last debate were enough to end any hope that he had ever had. So, at worst, we have several years of him joining the ranks of the likes of InfoWars with his newly created Trump TV. Well, that is before that goes bankrupt as well, which according to my formula will be in about 8 months and 7 days. But in the meantime, can you imagine what crap will be spewed out of it? Trump TV will make Alex Jones look like Jon Stewart. Anyway, put a pin in that for now and keep everything crossed that this is just a gigantic glitch in the matrix, and tomorrow we will wake up and this will be all but a distant dream.
Here's why he does it this way. Let me explain why he does it.
Jeb is so wrong.
He said no.
Wrong. Jeb is so wrong.
That is so wrong.
Down the national debt.
Wrong.
Advocate.
Wrong with that money.
Except for when you do wake up, the clock radio is playing the Howard Stern show and Numbnuts is word vomiting some shit about how he likes to grope lobotomized gorillas or some such thing. Okay, the reason I bring up the Howard Stern show is that more people than I expected are turning their hate towards him for encouraging Trump when he appeared on his show a la Billy Bush. Except there is a massive difference here. Billy Bush was caught talking like a turd with the walking turd about how and what they want to do with a woman and their genitals. To all those fucktards out there that keep saying that this is just locker room talk, it was locker room talk. Yes, it was locker room talk. And then they stepped out of the locker room or the bus. But they stepped out and did the shit they were talking about doing. That is the difference. Anyway, to Stern. The LA Times wrote about Stern that the shock jock is speaking out for the first time about Trump, the role his radio show had played in the campaign, and the controversial statements that Trump has made about women. Stern, a Democrat, said he wasn't playing these interviews with Trump because to do so would be a betrayal. Donald Trump did the show in an effort to be entertaining and have fun with us, Stern said on his show on Sirius Satellite Radio. I fully knew what I was doing when I interviewed Trump. I knew I had a guy who loved to talk about sex. I had a guy who loved to evaluate women on a scale of 1 to 10. These are avenues I went down because I knew it would entertain the audience, Stern said. Stern, who considers Trump a friend, said that he asked Trump why he was running for president and said that he was surprised the recordings from his radio show didn't emerge earlier. I said, "Why are you doing this?" Stern said he asked Trump earlier this year. Why would a guy with billions of dollars, apparently he's got billions of dollars, run for president? Don't you know that what they're going to do to you? Don't you know they're going to open everything up? Stern, whose radio career was built on raunchy talk, also weighed in on the videotape where Trump was saying he can kiss and grope women without their consent because of his celebrity. Stern disputed Trump's defense that the words were merely locker room talk. And remember, again, this is one of Trump's friends. Anyway, Stern said, I have never been in the room when somebody has said, grab them by the pussy. No one's ever advocated going that step where you get a little bit, hey, I'm going to invade somebody's space. Okay, so let's get one thing straight here. I'm not really a huge fan of Howard Stern, but he is an entertainer, and he's made a decent career out of his shock jockiness anyway. And I would be talking out of my trump if I said I didn't want half of his audience. And on top of all that, he just had Metallica in his studio. And, well, my studio hasn't even got room for a Metallica bobblehead doll, so he must be doing something just a little bit different to me. Anyway, the point of all this, Stern is an entertainer. His job is to entertain. More importantly, he told Dum Dum that this shit was going to come and bite him on his bulbous ginger-haired ass. And true to his name, Dum Dum ignored the advice. But should you be hating on Howard Stern for not replaying the tapes? Well, this may surprise you, but I think Howard Stern did exactly the right thing here. He knew that somebody else will have the tape, and he warned Trump of this. He warned his friend. Stern and Trump are, according to both of them, friends. And even if your friend is a total thunder cunt, the right thing to do is look out for your friend.
Happens to be wrong. Wrong. We
have one more question from Ken Bone about energy policy. Ken?
Wrong.
That is, of course, unless your friend is Gary Busey. Now, this is from the Raw story and the Daily Beast. Story reads, according to 5 former staffers on The Apprentice, Dum Dum wasn't the only person on the set who couldn't keep his hands to himself. In interviews with the Daily Beast, the 5 remembered actor Gary Busey grabbing one of their colleagues between her legs and seeing Trump laughing about it later. According to the assaulted woman, the incident occurred during the 2011 season of Celebrity Apprentice while shooting in New York City. She described the assault as the actor putting his hand firmly between her legs as well as forcing her hand onto his own crotch. According to the witnesses, Busey's actions were criticized immediately, but Trump found it amusing and refused to boot the actor off the show. They had booze for the gallery party. I think Little John ordered it, the woman told the Daily Beast. And so a few of the celebrities wanted to do a shot together. And after we finished setting up for the show, we all took a shot together and then went to stand together for B-roll time. We were smoking cigarettes outside and Busey was standing next to me. And then at one point, he grabbed me firmly between my legs and ran his hand up my stomach and grabbed my breast, she continued. I didn't know what to do, so I made a joke that, she said, I've never been sexually harassed by a celebrity before. Then he grabbed my hand and put it over his penis and said, I'm just getting started, baby. Staffers on the show said Trump eventually gave Busey a slap on the wrist and that he did not leave the show until the end of the season when he was fired. The woman who was assaulted also stated that Trump said gross things all the time and that the atmosphere at Trump Tower when shooting was disgusting due to the high frequency of sexual comments and harassments. Well, if it's not bad enough that a woman can't have a smoke without being molested, you have the living Gogothlin doing it. And I don't know if I hadn't noticed this in the past or because of the Trump tapes I was more aware of this now, but I actually saw something a little similar very recently when I was with a group of people, and it was absolutely revolting and disturbing. I'm not going to go into the details of it all, but essentially a guy was pretty much all hands all over a woman, and it wasn't subtle at all. And nobody seemed to notice, or if they did, they weren't saying anything. So I sort of acknowledged what was happening and did a weird sort of sign language twisty thumbs up, thumbs down thing, asking if she was okay. And she kind of nodded to me. Anyway, later on, when she had escaped from Gropey McOctopus Face, she come over and thanked me. Anyway, it turns out that this happens all the time to varying degrees. So, men, don't do this. Imagine if you're married or have a daughter, or if you're really lucky, a mother. How would you feel if some creature was groping them and putting your wife or your daughter or your mother's hand on their cocks? Think about it. So, Andy, you sent me a couple of stories this week, but there's one that you sent me, which we're going to talk about this in two different ways, actually. So there's two things in this story. And what I've done is I've highlighted some parts. I'm going to read the story and leave a couple of words out, and then we'll go back to those and do the story separately, because there's something in this that really pissed me off, and we've not discussed this yet. So
What's the story?
This is Playboy model Katie May died at the hands of chiropractor. It turns so there was no. Well, let me read the story. So. Autopsy results reveal, this is from MSN.com and other places, to be fair. But anyway, autopsy results reveal that Katie May died after visiting a chiropractor's office and sustaining a fatal tear to an artery in her neck.
Ooh. I know, I read this and I thought, wow.
Yeah. So the outlet TMZ reported this last Tuesday, and the outlet obtained a copy of May's death certificate, which says the late Playboy model died as a result of neck manipulation by a chiropractor that tore her vertebral artery and subsequently cut off blood flow to her brain. Her death was ruled as accidental, although it's not known if the model's family would pursue further action against the chiropractor, which I fucking hope they do.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. She's 34-year-old, and the story goes on to say, 34-year-old died in February this year after suffering a stroke due to a blockage in her carotid artery, according to the TMZ report at the time. The model fell during a photo shoot just before her death and subsequently visited a chiropractor's office where the tear to her vertebral artery occurred. Just to finish off the first part of the story, so it reads, the accomplished model and single mother left behind a young daughter who she would often talk about as the inspiration for her career. I had the most important person in my world, my daughter, to make proud each day and to remind me of what I was working towards, May said in an interview in January. Failure was not an option. Not putting her in the best school was not an option. Not living the lifestyle that I had dreamed for us was not an option. So let's talk about that part to start with. Now, I don't know if you're aware, Andy, but the British Chiropractors Association took Simon Singh to court for libel after he made comments about chiropractors in general. But it's well known and it's been proven beyond doubt that chiropractic does next to nothing for conditions, and we're hearing about these deaths all the time now, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, just a chiropractor. I mean, right. This is where I show how dumb I am, dumbass. But like, to be fair, I actually only really come to know that these exist.
Yeah,
basically from American shows and stuff like that, because it's not something that was always advertised.
No, well, there's
until early history. Now, so a chiropractor, do they just manipulate the body?
Well,
what do they do?
They manipulate the spine and other parts with the belief. I'm not saying that this was the case in this instance, but chiropractors believe that they can heal the body by manipulation. They call it subluxation. So by manipulating the spine, they can cure anything from a common cold to autism to it's out and out fucking quackery, and it's legitimized because, you know, the chiropractors go and do, I think it's still 4 years. They study, they get called a doctor, and yet they're taught that they can cure autism and cancer and all sorts of shit by manipulating the spine. What they're doing...
The spine is one of the most important and vital parts of your body.
Yeah.
So that believes that an individual can work on that area of your body, and they could kill you. They could disable you.
Well, that's the case.
Well,
there was a story earlier on in the year, an Australian so-called chiropractor who was manipulating a baby's spine. And when I say baby, it was a newborn. And when I say newborn, it was days old.
What about the mother? Why did they take
the mother? The mother was there. Why did they take them?
Because
people believe bullshit. It's
God.
unbelievable how.
That's so sad.
Yeah. Now, there are what they're calling the new chiropractors who don't believe in this. And I don't know what sort of chiropractor the model saw, but the new chiropractors are specializing in spinal problems. Some people are. There is some evidence. I'm not going for or against them now, but there is some evidence that they are being successful in treating spinal problems.
Right.
Not treating cancer, not treating autism, not treating insomnia, not treating the common cold or whatever the case may be that they claim to be able to cure.
So they do 4 years training, basically.
Yeah, and get to call themselves a doctor.
Right.
It's absolutely fucking appalling, and people are dying. And you hardly ever hear about it. Okay, well, let me read off the NHS Choices website, and this is what the NHS classify a chiropractor is. And they say, according to the General Chiropractic Council, chiropractic is a health profession concerned with the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of mechanical disorders of the musculoskeletal system, so bones. Chiropractors use their hands to treat disorders of the bones, muscles, and joints. Goes on to other stuff, but then they say, and this is the NHS website. They say chiropractors treat conditions related to the spine, such as lower back, neck pain, etc. And then they say some chiropractors claim to treat wider range of conditions, including asthma, infant colic, IBS, and many other symptoms. But they also say chiropractic is part of complementary and alternative medicine, meaning that is different form of treatments that are part of conventional Western medicine. Some use of chiropractic treatments are based on ideas, and evidence base is not recognized by the majority of independent scientists.
Oh, right. So a little disclaimer at the bottom
based
there, really.
on ideas. That's just fucking phenomenal. Like I say, it's killing people. The other part of the story that I want to go back to, so let me just bring that up again. So the parts that I missed out, I'll just read them and add in the last little bit. So, in the start of the story, I said the outlet obtained a copy of May's death certificate, which says the Playboy model, and Queen of Snapchat child. This was an important part of the story for TMZ and MSN. They had to put in that Queen of Snapchat. And then another part that I missed out, and this is what counts as news now. At the time of her death, May had around 2 million followers on Instagram and a dedicated fan base on Snapchat. So nothing in the story that I can find, and I looked around other sources, there's nothing in the story that talked about how bad or how bullshit chiropractic is, but they have to put in there about her fan base and her followers. That is a sign now of how important somebody is how many followers they have.
Yeah,
absolutely fucking disgusting.
I'm so not
and
important.
The media...
I have like 3 followers.
I have about 2,500, but I'm pretty sure most of them are because of you.
Oh, right, okay. Whatever.
Shall we move on? Because that story made me angry.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, so moving on to religious news. McDonald's are looking to open a vomit factory next to the Vatican, and the Cardinals are not happy. And this is from the Evening Standard. So the story reads, Roman Catholic cardinals have hit out over plans for the Vatican to rent out a property next to St. Peter's Basilica in Rome to US fast food chain McDonald's. The Catholic Church would receive €300,000 a month if they allowed the company to use part of a building in a square adjacent to the Vatican as the site for the new restaurant. Cardinals who live in apartments above the location of the proposed McDonald's have protested the move and described it as a perverse decision. The proposed deal was announced earlier this year. One of the cardinals, a former bishop of Zama Minor, has written a letter of complaint to Pope Frankenfurter over the agreement. Speaking to Italian newspaper La Repubblica, Cardinal Segreca said that it's a controversial, perverse decision, to say the least, not at all respectful of the architecture and urban traditions of one of the most characteristic squares overlooking the colonnade of St. Peter, visited every day by thousands of pilgrims and tourists. He goes on to say that it's a business decision, moreover, ignores the culinary traditions of the Roman restaurant. The Cardinal added that the mega sandwiches on offer at McDonald's are damaging to customers' health, and as such a questionable practice should not even be considered in Vatican rooms. Right, so where to go with this one? It would give me so much pleasure to jump in with a McHappy Meal joke, maybe a McMolester meal that comes with a burger and Coke and fries and Rohypnol. Perhaps a satirical combination of killer clowns and a sign above the door that reads, "Enter as innocent, leave as a victim." But no, I will take the high ground for a change. The red-robed kiddly fiddlers are right. There shouldn't be a McDonald's at the Vatican, or anywhere else for that matter. Something I really do admire in Europe is that the distinct lack of fast food chain restaurants like McDonald's. And I really do mean like McDonald's. I'm not just picking on them. And I know there are some scattered around about, but in comparison to the anglicised world, they are rare. For instance, the area we stay in when Andy and I go to Berlin, there's one McDonald's and everything else is locally owned cafes and street food stalls and things like that. But from where I work, within a 2-mile radius, there are 4 McDonald's alone, and that's not counting all the other junk food franchise brands that are about, and they have infested us. And not far from where I live, there are 3 McDonald's so close together that you can start eating a quarter pounder at one and wash it down with a Diet Coke from the next one while you're on your way to getting the hot apple pie that will burn a hole in the roof of your mouth at the third one, and at no time have any yet to be consumed so-called food in your hands. Perhaps if the Vatican did something about not molesting people in numbers that would make Donald Trump blush, they wouldn't need to rent out space to the company that's made an art form of brainwashing and manipulating children. Hold on. I see what's going on here. You cheeky little fucks. Ronald McDonald is the Pope. So, Andy, I need your help with something. There's a guy who apparently is famous in the UK for advertising crisps. His name is Gary Lineker.
He's actually famous for being a footballer, but yeah.
You mean soccer, huh?
He was known as one of the nicest gentleman footballers.
Yeah, and I know nothing about football or soccer as it's called everywhere else in the world, but what I've seen of him on the TV, he does seem like a half decent guy. Anyway, he said, so this week there were a big bunch of children brought into the UK out of the Calais jungle, which is where the refugees, or many of the refugees, are gathering at the moment. Yeah. And some dickhead MP decided, I think he was a Tory actually, decided that it would be a good idea to tell the world that they all looked a lot older than they were saying that they were, and that we should inspect their teeth like their horses to see how old they actually are. So Gary Lineker jumped on Twitter to defend these children. Yeah. And as you will imagine, Twitter went apeshit, and all the bigots and all the haters and all the mongotards jumped out and absolutely ripped into him. Did you see any of this?
I didn't actually see the Twitter feed, but I can imagine that would have opened him up just for all kinds, to be honest.
And some wanker even put a poll on saying, do you think that Lineker should be sacked from the beat? So Lineker works as a consultant. No, what's the word?
He's just a presenter.
He's a presenter. So they all work as, they're not directly employed by the BBC, but he works, obviously, he does the BBC Sport, he does the football, commentates on the football, and advertise Walker's crisp. So all the dickheads have jumped up and started polls saying that, he should he be sacked from the BBC? Should he be sacked? They're boycotting Walker's crisps and all sorts, because he defended children. I'm
unsure, actually, how him having an opinion on the whole refugee issue has any impact on people buying crisps.
Yeah.
Or his opinion on the latest game that he's just been commentating on. So, I mean, that is just an idiotic response anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever people say, I mean, you always expect that on Twitter because you get a lot of haters, as you well know.
Yeah.
But
And it all linked to Brexit again, because they're saying, we voted to get the refugees out. No, we voted to leave the European Union. These are refugees from the fucking Middle East, not from Europe.
That just highlights people's ignorance, I think.
Exactly.
And I mean, what does it take? Does it take us to be in a position where we become refugees, that we actually have to realise the plight of these people?
Yeah.
That you're dealing with ignorant people that actually just don't want to kind of put a human element to this.
The fact of the matter is, we could become economic refugees. It's a very slight chance, but there's a chance if the Scots leave and the Irish leave and they form their little union, as I've predicted, we could become economic refugees. Look at the value of our currency now.
I'm telling you
worthless.
now, I will be pitching a tent in Scotland.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that was the other news that we kind of missed. There seems to be an influx of people trying to get German citizenship at the moment. So it used to be thought of, the stories are reading, it used to be thought of that the Brits hated Germany, which I've never seen evidence for, but anybody that's got any sort of even slight links to Germany are trying to get their citizenship.
I mean,
now.
We wanted citizenship before the Brexit, didn't we?
Exactly,
I mean, we've always been a big fan, but hey, there's a lot of people. I mean, the Brexit was a 50-50 split in my eyes, so there's a lot of people there that are not happy.
Exactly, And talking about Twitter and hate on Twitter, I got some really nice hate this week.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah,
what for?
and so last week I talked about QED and the struggles that I had.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pretty certain that I, all the way through, said that the problems that I had were my problems, had nothing to do with...
That was crystal clear.
Yeah.
You were absolutely gutted to have to come away from it.
Of course I was, yeah.
You'd looked forward to that weekend, and there was some of the main stuff you wanted to see was happening on that day, and you had to come away.
Yeah, so Sunday was the main day for me, and I missed out on all of it.
That was definitely your personal issue. Why?
Yeah, apparently I'm a what were the words? Retarded sook.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's nice.
Yeah, so
again, another ignorant
Exactly.
Twat.
Yeah.
But hey.
But we had some good feedback. We had some really good feedback, which I want to get to. I'm taking, so the advice, I said this last week as well, Cara Santa Maria said to me, the best way to avoid the haters is just ignore them. Just completely ignore them. So I didn't even, I deleted the comment. I didn't even bother reporting them to Twitter. Couldn't give a fuck.
Do you know what? That actually riles them up more when you've got nothing to say back to them, because you don't feed them, do you? So
no, but we got some you got some really good feedback.
That does surprise me.
No. So like I said earlier, every time somebody would come to me at QED, the words were nearly identical, as if it was scripted. Love the show, listen all the time, Andy's the best. They don't love me. They love Andy. Anyway,
thank you.
Yeah, but we got some feedback from Lucy. She sent me this on the Twitter, and she's been a long-suffering supporter of the show. And she says, I've been listening to a whole bunch of your episodes in the last few days because I want to catch up and can't bear to skip any. I have to listen to them all in order. Anyway, a couple of comments. First, I really like the addition of Andi to the show. It brings another dimension. She's funny and insightful, and you two have good banter. But I also really like your rants, diatribe, solo segments thrown in there too. Next, I've just listened to you talk about hate tweets, and I say fuck those guys too. A few episodes back, you talked about being given crap in school because of your speech, and that really stuck a chord with me. I lisped fairly badly as a kid, and I can control it these days unless I'm really tired or something. I love the Game of Thrones references thrown in. And I've had a lot of that recently, and it's not deliberate.
Yeah.
It's just that if you watch Game of Thrones and live in the UK, you can really see the likeness, can't you?
You can see the parallels,
The wall, we talk about the wall and north of the wall. There was, and it's pretty much destructed now, but there was the Hadrian's Wall, which separated the England from the wildlings. So, I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones, actually. Anyway, where were we? Okay, Lucy goes on to say, I love hearing about your running too. I'm hoping to run my first marathon next year and have done a few halves and shorter.
Excellent
and if
stuff.
you've got some tips how you did it, in my ears will perk up. That's not even getting started on your skeptical stuff, which you present in such an accessible and entertaining way. In short, thanks for the awesome podcast. Cheers.
Oh, awesome feedback there.
Really nice.
I look
really
forward
nice
to talking
feedback.
about running, actually, because,
yeah.
I mean, I've been running for a number of years and stuff, so I'd be happy talking about that.
Yeah, I think just reading through that, it seems like Lucy's not quite at the stage at the episodes where Kevin joined us for 2 episodes, and we talked a little bit about running and skepticism as far as running and all
nutrition
the woo and the nutrition and all that sort of
tape
stuff.
And all the stuff you can get suckered into from the magazines.
Yeah, but I think my very first tip for anybody who's contemplating doing a marathon, nutrition is the key, and that's something that Kevin and I did go into detail about. But you see, so you can go into the shops and all the advice in all the magazines is take this gel, take this supplement, do this, do that. What do we eat when we go and run marathons?
Well, we eat food, normal food.
Cheese sandwiches.
Yeah, but my top tip, my one and only tip, if I put it in one, don't hang your hat on training plans in a magazine. No. They're not catered for individuals, and there's a lot there that, for example, there's a lot there that will say, run 4 times a week, blah, 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 3 times. My best marathon was based on running 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So everybody's so different. Some people get their best out of running 5 times a week. So you've really just got to listen to your body. That is my number one tip. Yeah. Yeah. And eat real food. Don't remember it was the Manchester Marathon, and we practically took a picnic lunch, and and I said, okay, it's lunchtime, let's stop for lunch, and we're pulling out sandwiches and cheese and all sorts of stuff, and people were looking at us like we were morons. But to be fair,
worked.
It did, and we were training for an ultra at that time, and when you do ultras, you can't live on just sugar. You have to take in different foods. So that was part of that thing. So I mean, again, a lot of people are different. A lot of people don't need to eat, depending on how fast you run. If you're going to do it in 3 hours, you probably don't need to eat. So, it's just listening to your body, really, isn't it?
And I think that's the other thing. It just reminded me. So we were training for you. We were doing different ultras. We were training for different ultras. You were doing your 100-miler. I was just doing 62 miles. But one of the things that I found is if you want to if you're training for a marathon, go and do your half marathons, but do the hardest ones that you can find. Do the trail uphill marathon. Do the harder the race, the better it will be. So when you step back to a road marathon, it's more like a training day than anything else. So you actually get to enjoy the marathon itself. We see people, and we know so many people who will go out and do like the London Marathon. They'll train their guts out for it, and then not enjoy the view because they've trained to do a marathon. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Everybody gets out of running, so it's like different things.
Yeah.
I mean, some people, their focus is purely on that time and stuff, and there's other people that just want to soak up the atmosphere. You just got to enjoy it, because once you start training for a marathon in particular, it takes a lot of time out your day and out your week. Yeah. So the key is just enjoy it for whatever enjoyment you get out of it.
Exactly. So, remember the Yuletime? I think we have talked about this in the past. The Yuletime Yomp a couple of years ago when we run. So that's a 10K. It's a very short race.
It's quite traily, isn't it?
It's a mud
Cross
race.
Country, it is.
It's
brilliant.
It's just running through slop. But we run through a herd of 200 deer. And the amount of people that didn't see those deer was phenomenal.
Yeah, their heads were just down, weren't they? Yeah.
So it's all fun. Go out. People run for all different reasons, but for God's sake, don't do it because everybody else is doing it and you think you have to do it. Get something out of it and really enjoy it.
Enjoy it, yeah, definitely.
So that was meant to be feedback. Now we're giving running advice. Shall we keep going on with the feedback?
You can't beat a good tangent.
You can't. No. Not that I've ever done that before. Anyway, so more feedback from No Scope Comics, whose comics are absolutely phenomenal. You can follow them at No Scope Comics on Twitter. Anyway, they say, "Hey, dude, forgot to say thanks for the follow. Just listened to your latest episode. Great work. Sad to hear QED didn't go as planned. Jealous you got to meet Noah," referring to Noah Illusions there from Scathing Atheist, who I still contend is one of the best people on the planet. Anyway. On a side note, I had no idea that spectrum disorders could alter the physical sensation of something. Is that a common symptom or something unique to yourself.
Oh, no, we see this so often, don't we?
Yeah, it's very, very common. So I think this comes on the back of me talking about shaving and the new razor that I've been trying out. But it's phenomenal. And it is different for people, but it is very common that people with autism spectrum disorders, I'm mainly talking about, have physical sensations can be amplified phenomenally.
Oh, yeah, even just somebody physically touching you.
Yeah,
so if you're just not feeling in the right mood, even me just touching your arm.
Yeah, especially when you're cold.
Yeah.
If your hands are cold and you touch my skin, and I'm talking about just the lightest of touches,
just as well,
the pain is phenomenal.
You know, and I'm laughing, but because just as well, I don't take it that I make your skin crawl, isn't it?
Oh my! But it is recognised, and it's something. Even going back to our GP, he's sort of given advice on that as well. But it does range, and it really. Sometimes it doesn't affect me. Sometimes it does. Shaving is one of the worst things that I can do. You'll find a lot of people on the spectrum cut, and I've kind of stopped doing this because I'm trying to wean myself off and get used to it. But a lot of people on the spectrum cut tags off their clothes because they can feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sensitive to it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm sure I've talked about this before as well, but normally, so if you're neurotypical, you put on your clothes and within 5 or 10 seconds, you don't feel like you're wearing, you've lost that sensation of the new clothes where I can actually feel everything all the time.
I mean, I cut my tags out, but that's for a different reason. Also, people can't see my size.
But it says 10.
Yeah, right.
They're the ones we restitch
more
in.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for that feedback. Don't forget, absolutely, if you want a good laugh, No Scope Comics, it's at No Scope Comics on the Twitter. It's really funny, and he doesn't do enough of them. I really do look forward to looking at them. Okay, and finally for feedback, we got a message from Atheist Evolution, again on the Twitter, and it's at Atheist Evolution without the N on the end. So, they say, working through back shows, you ask for feedback. Love the solo diatribes. Love Andi. Love the politics. Love the Game of Thrones references. Thanks. So again, thanks very much for that. We all love Andi. One thing, so the reason I was asking about the feedback on the diatribes is that some people like them, some people don't like them. I love doing them. There is a lot of work that does go into them. So just really looking for, and they are going to continue, but just looking for the feedback.
You actually made me laugh on your last one. So
which one? Tell me quickly. You didn't send in feedback.
I just told you now.
Okay, first audio feedback. That reminds me, you can send in audio feedback. Just record an MP3, email it in, contact details, email information, all that sort of stuff's on the website, which is skepticsmashtalk.com. But if you keep it short, about 30 or 40 seconds is about best. So, okay, and the very last thing to mention this week is that very soon, in the next few weeks, I'll be interviewing the author of Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World, and the author's Matthew James. So, no spoilers at the moment, but it's a satirical look, and you can take that from the book title itself, but a very satirical look at the world and God. And it's written very much in the style of Douglas Adams or Terry Pratchett. So if you like those two guys, you'll love this book. It's available as an ebook right now for £2.29 via Amazon and other places as well. So have a read and join me in a few weeks when Matthew and I discuss the book. Okay, so that's all we really have time for this week. All the links are available from skepticsmashtalk.com, as well as the contact information and the links to the Twitter and Facebook feed. So until next time, on behalf of Andi, the true star of the show, and myself, thanks for listening, and this has been Skeptic Smash Talk.
But I notice anytime anything wrong happens, I say they're wrong because they were wrong. And were they wrong?
Are they wrong?
I think they're wrong 100%. Sometimes they're wrong. They were wrong. Sometimes they're wrong. It's the New York Times. They're always wrong. Well, I would say my wife tells me I'm wrong all the time. Wrong. Wrong.
That is
wrong. And he did the wrong thing. Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Proved over and over again.
Wrong.
He actually
Wrong. It's wrong.
They were not hired. And here's why he does it this way. Let me explain why he hires.
Jeb is so wrong.
He said no.
Wrong. Jeb is so wrong.
That is so wrong.
down the
wrong.
national debt.
Wrong.
Advocate.
Wrong. With that money, lost
Very nice words, but happens to be wrong. 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 Wrong.
We have one more question from Ken Bone about energy policy. Ken?
Wrong.